At midnight, while New York slept, Wall Street quietly shifted. $4.2 trillion moved without a sound. By morning, the financial heart of America had changed forever. Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, every giant woke to the same shocking reality. The Canada Pension Plan Investment Board had silently become their largest shareholder. Mark Carney, the Canadian mastermind, was smiling. He knew what nobody else had fully realized yet. America's biggest banks were no longer purely American. Canada had gained unprecedented leverage over Wall Street. In Goldman Sachs' headquarters on the 43rd floor in Manhattan, panic was spreading. CEO David Solomon stared at the report in disbelief. He had read it 3 times. The numbers were clear. CPPIB had purchased 12.7% of Goldman Sachs. This wasn't just a big investment. This was game-changing control. "How is this possible?" Solomon demanded. His chief financial officer knew the answer but stayed silent. Canada had acted legally. Over months, through quiet accumulation of shares across different markets, they had seized control in plain sight. This wasn't just Goldman Sachs. That same night, similar tremors hit J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, and even Wells Fargo. One by one, Canada's pension funds were taking powerful positions inside America's financial system. Viewers, think about the scale here. We're not talking about hedge funds or private equity. We're talking about pension funds, giant pools of retirement money. CPPIB, Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan, and Quebec's Caisse de dépôt. Together, they controlled $4.2 trillion. That's a financial weapon bigger than Trump's entire tariff war chest. The architect of this strategy was none other than Mark Carney, former central banker, former Bank of England governor, a man who understood the silent weapons of capitalism. He knew where the true power was hidden, not in managers or CEOs, but in shareholders, those who own, those who vote, those who decide. And Canada, with its massive pension funds, was stepping into that role. This was a political strategy disguised as financial investment. While Trump escalated trade wars, Carney plotted a different kind of war, a silent economic invasion. Instead of resisting America, Canada was buying America from within. The first target was Goldman Sachs. For 6 months, CPPIB quietly accumulated shares. Different exchanges, different prices, no single move large enough to alarm regulators. But the total? Enough to claim influence in the boardroom. At Goldman's emergency meeting, the Canadian representative was no longer just an observer. With active voting rights, they made their first move. Expand operations in Canada. Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? But the reality was deeper. By tying Goldman more closely to Canada's economy, Carney was creating dependence. Next came J.P. Morgan Chase. Jamie Dimon, one of the most powerful bankers alive, suddenly faced a force he could not fight. The Canadian representative proposed partnerships in digital banking, pointing to Toronto's booming fintech sector. Dimon couldn't say no. It was too logical. But again, the real plan was subtle. Every partnership made American banks more reliant on Canada. Morgan Stanley was targeted next. With 8.3% Canadian ownership, influence was undeniable. The Canadian proposal focused on ESG, environmental, social, governance investments, a field where Canada already led. Morgan Stanley's deeper push into ESG didn't just benefit them. It cemented Canada's reputation as a global ESG power. Then came Bank of America. CPPIB and Ontario Teachers worked together, capturing 11.2% of the bank. Brian Moynihan quickly realized these investors weren't passive. They demanded action. Soon after, Bank of America announced its largest new operations center, right in Toronto. Wells Fargo, wounded from scandals, was desperate for strong partners. Canada stepped in. With cash and credibility, they cleaned up troubled assets while tightening their grip. Wells Fargo's CEO praised Canada as a leader in global banking. For Carney, those words were music, but the strategy didn't stop with traditional banking. Canadian pension funds expanded into fintech giants like PayPal, Square, and Stripe. They took positions in insurance companies like AIG and MetLife. They influenced asset managers like BlackRock and Vanguard. They partnered with private equity titans like Blackstone and KKR. They even moved into hedge funds. Renaissance Technologies, Bridgewater, Citadel, every sector, every pillar of Wall Street. Slowly, silently, strategically, Canada was embedding itself everywhere. The results appeared quickly. Goldman Sachs opened a major office in Toronto's financial district. J.P. Morgan launched a technology hub in Waterloo. Morgan Stanley set up an ESG center in Vancouver. Bank of America doubled its Canadian footprint. Wells Fargo aligned operations with Canadian expertise. What happened next was even more remarkable. Canadian graduates from Toronto, McGill, UBC were no longer moving to New York for opportunities. Instead, Wall Street was moving north. Brain drain reversed. Canada was exporting influence, not losing talent. Inside Washington, alarm bells rang. Analysts at the Treasury realized something extraordinary. The stability of America's financial sector was now partially dependent on Canadian decision-makers. For the first time in history, the U.S. banking system had a foreign anchor. This changed everything politically. When Trump's administration pressured Canada on trade, Wall Street lobbyists pushed back. Bank CEOs whispered to Congress, "Damaging Canada damages us." Suddenly, Canadian interests became Wall Street's interests. In congressional hearings, committee members began speaking cautiously about Canadian disputes. Lobbyists made sure of it. Carney's strategy was working on Capitol Hill as well as on Bay Street, and it didn't end with lobbying. Canadian pension funds began shaping U.S. regulation indirectly. Banking laws, securities rules, fintech regulations, all were influenced by Canadian preferences. Banks didn't want competitive disadvantages. They adopted Canadian-friendly standards. This was regulatory arbitrage in action. Canada's rules were migrating into America, slowly, quietly, but with massive consequences. So let's step back. What do we see? A financial revolution executed without tanks, without threats, without headlines. Just money. Patient, calculated, powerful money. Is this possible in real life? Absolutely. Pension funds are among the largest institutional investors on Earth. They move trillions. They decide corporate futures. Their size gives them long-term patience that hedge funds lack. And their motives, stable returns, align perfectly with influence strategies. The bigger question is this: how can America respond? Can Washington limit Canadian ownership without breaking its own free market principles? Can regulators restrict foreign pension funds without alienating allies? Or is this simply the new reality, where borders mean less and capital rules more? For now, all eyes are on Wall Street. The next few months will reveal whether U.S. policymakers push back or whether they quietly adapt. What's clear is that the balance of power has shifted, not with a bang, but with a silent transfer of shares. And viewers, make no mistake, this story is far from over. If Canadian pension funds continue this pace, their influence will extend beyond finance into energy, healthcare, even tech. The next 48 hours, the next few weeks, the next round of shareholder votes, these will decide how deep Canada's control runs. We are watching a political strategy wrapped in financial clothing. It is unprecedented, it is shocking, and it could reshape the future of global capitalism. Stay tuned, because this silent revolution is only beginning. If you value these deep-dive financial analyses, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Are pension funds the most underestimated political weapon of our time? Could this be the real future of economic warfare? Your perspective matters, and we'll be covering every development as it unfolds.